What is up, YouTube? It's Kingfisher745, and this is going to be the All Hail the King episode 37 setup video. Something that I'm probably going to do in the future whenever time allows it is to go ahead and post a setup video for the future episode, whether it be All Hail the King or the Adamantium process, Team Spotlight, you name it. So what I'm going to try to do is post this on my second channel, and then you can see what the upcoming teams are going to be, as well as try them out for yourself. This will also hopefully answer all those ISO 8 questions, even though, trust me, I don't consider myself the authority on ISO builds. Now, the very first team for the upcoming All Hail the King episode is going to be Blade and Drax. This team up is pretty special because I am using a variation of the Invincible Agent setup. So first I'm using the Infiltrator Power Armor, and that does have shock absorption. This causes melee damage received to be reduced by 25%. Next I'm using the Guardian Insignia, which grants us survival training. Of course, that's also a damage reducer which says grants all party members, or at least all Guardian members, a 50% damage reduction while health is over 80%. Also, upon use, it's going to give us those rising up buffs. Next I'm using the Biometric ID card, and this item automatically recovers health and stamina when attacked once per round. The idea behind this is to keep our health above a certain threshold, yes, for survival training, but most importantly for our final item. Then moving on, we're using the Guardian of Adelan, and that does protect allies from single target melee attacks. Also remember, our uniform does prevent 25% damage from melee. This protect weapon also generates a shield when attacking, has high crit resistance, but unfortunately since we're not using the protector it does not counter. Then finally we're using the Oni Breaker. The main reason is because of Sacred and Exalted. First, Sacred says at 100% health, all damage received is reduced by 75%. Also, if at 100% health at the beginning of a turn, your agent will receive Exalted. This causes him to be immune to attrition and damage over time effects. Let me tell you, this setup makes your agent extremely difficult to kill. Next we're going to take a look at Blade's setup, and this will remain the same for the entire video. First off, for his normal ISO 8 build I am using mostly Mercurial. That's attack, accuracy, and evasion. Typically I would say to go with Forceful, but we are trying out an evasion build. So another ISO you can use, which I am using some of, is the Proficient ISO 8. This is attack and evasion. Then as far as his E-ISO slot, I'm using the Aggressive Empowered ISO 8. This says melee attacks increase attack. Then finally for our 1 A-ISO slot, currently I was using the Powerful Bladed A-ISO. All this does is increase damage, but there certainly are some other possibilities. For example, if you do have it, you could use the Knocking A-ISO, and this says equipped melee action applies incapacitation. Then there's also a few other options like the Pulverizing A-ISO, the Vampiric Augmented ISO 8, and the Vorpal. I will say this, however, with the Vampiric, I wouldn't want to consume my own bleed, at least not in the builds that we're going to be using. Secondly, the Vorpal was changed, and so they kind of nerfed the damage. Well, I no longer see it on the tooltip, but I do believe it's a 15% damage reduction. So what I'm actually going to do is switch to the Pulverizing A-ISO, and that's pretty much what I would recommend. Although, spoiler alert, in the video I didn't have this A-ISO equipped. Instead I used the Powerful Bladed A-ISO, which only increases damage on that attack. So now that Blade's out of the way, we're going to go ahead and take a look at Drax, and then the other agent setups and teammates. First I'm using Guardian Drax as a bruiser. Also right away you can see he has Generosity. Then as far as his ISO 8 build, it's going to be more along the lines of my normal build. First we're using 3 times Bulky, so that means attack and defense. Then Forceful times 3. That one's attack, defense, and accuracy. And 2 Powerful. So health and attack. Then moving on to his E-ISO, it's going to be the Sympathetic Empowered ISO 8. This says buff abilities grant a small HP boost. So basically every single round when you use Cry for Blood, he's going to gain back health. By the way, I did throw the Bloody A-ISO on his level 1, hoping that it would help with an extra bleed. But of course his level 2 buff is also going to add bleeds to his attacks. Also, since Cry for Blood is a quick action buff, I went ahead and placed the Manifesting A-ISO on it. This says buff actions used on allies also apply Epiphany. Now I know this isn't a buff for allies, but it is something you'll use every turn as a quick action, and it does grant Drax Epiphany. meaning that you're guaranteeing that his next attack is going to be a critical hit. So since we know Drax is going to be a critical hit machine, I just went ahead and placed the powerful bladed AISO on his level 6 and 9. So there you have our first team setup. Now let's move on to number 2. The second team may very well be my favorite of the group. In this one we're using the Generalist Empowered Armor, and on that of course we're using the Inspiring EISO. So that grants morale boost to all allies. Then we've already seen how Blade's built, but let's see how this team is constructed overall. First of all, we know about his bleeding and his immortal blood. But on top of that, he does apply incapacitation with his level 6. So just keep those things in mind as we check out She-Hulk's build. After we show her build and as we get into her AISO and abilities, you'll see why these two do have some synergy together. So first, She-Hulk's regular ISO 8 build does have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 forceful ISO 8. That's attack, defense, and accuracy. And 2 bulky, so attack and defense. Then we're using the Furious Empowered ISO 8, which causes her to gain a Hulk up each round and when attacked. Now here's where the bleeds come into play. She does have the Bloody AISO on her level 1, so that should help out Blade and hopefully his quickening. Then next, just so we can cut out those pesky Invisible Woman and rescue teams, we're able to place the Bursting AISO on her level 2. That's going to give her Motion Granite Shield Breaker. Then after that on her level 6, we're just going to go ahead and increase the damage. This is easily her one-shot ability, so we want to do as much as we can. Then finally on Bursts of Speed, we're using the Gracious AISO, that way we can restore stamina. Now moving on to our abilities, of course we can first see that bleed. Then where the incapacitation comes into play is with Motion Granite, and most importantly Stomp. This high damage attack exploits stuns. So there's some synergy with Blade, especially when the Bloody AISO is added to her level 1. But then we can make this even better with our agent setup. First of all, these items are very good by themselves, but also remember with the incapacitation and the stuns, we are helping out She-Hulk's finisher Stomp. So after the cube we have the Deathly Freeze Ray, which hits all enemies and applies incapacitation on attacks. Incapacitation does count as a stun. Then moving on to our next item, that's going to be the Hot Shot. If the agent has poison, which we do thanks to our final item, the Signpost, then this does have a high chance to stun the entire enemy team. So there you have our second setup, and it may be my favorite like I said. Then moving on to the third and final team of the video, we're going to start with the Tactician Empowered Armor. With that, we're using the Quick Empowered ISO 8 to give us snappy service. Then you can also see we are an honorary warrior, but we'll get to that item in just a second. First, let's take a look at Volstagg's build. You could kind of see his EISO, but we'll show those in much greater detail. So for his normal ISO 8 setup, we're using 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 forceful, and 1 bulky. That's 7 attack, defense, and accuracy ISO, and then 1 attack and defense. Then moving on to his EISO, first we're using his character-specific Voracious Empowered ISO 8. This says gain 1 stack of Well-Fed each round. Then next we're using the Vengeful Empowered ISO 8. This gives him Big and Fast, which says chance to get an extra turn when hit while protecting. Then on his level 1 we're using the Powerful Bladed AISO, but this is another ability where you could use any number of augmented ISO 8. You could use the Vampiric or Vorpal for example. Then we have the Manifesting AISO on his level 2. This is going to be very similar to Drax in that it's going to give him Epiphany. Although this action does give a buff to teammates, it only gives Epiphany to Volstagg as of the last time I tried it. Still, I like the fact that it does give Volstagg Epiphany. Then next, in the same exact manner, the Rising AISO is going to apply Rising Up to Volstagg. Then my hope was whenever he drank his elixir, which he does do from time to time throughout the battle, he would end up refreshing these buffs. And lastly, the big combo between Blade and Volstagg does indeed revolve around his Axarang. This weapon has Paragon Exploiter and exploits bleeds. Since Blade's level 1 does have 3 times bleed, that's why I just went with the Powerful Bladed AISO. With these two combined, that should be a very big hitting ability early in the fight. Oh, and I almost forgot, my agent's setup has the Asgardian Tankard. That way he can use the Elixir of Recovery and also cause Volstagg to use his, or vice versa. Next I'll be using the Staff of Asclepios for that heal, as well as for Blessed Renewal, which restores health over time. Speaking of heals, we also have the custom Sword of the Barony, which not only places bleeding, it also restores health to our entire team after hitting a bleeding target. This weapon actually works quite well with this team up. Then finally, we're going to use the Scroll of Aknazak, and that's in part to help Volstagg keep his buffs, but also because I didn't want to use the cube. But there you have it, all 3 setups for the upcoming All Hail the King video. Make sure you stay tuned and subscribe, that way you can see future setup videos, as well as outtakes, bloopers, and bonus footage. There's going to be all that and more right here on this second channel. Lastly, I do want to thank you all for watching, and ask you to please like, comment, and once again, please subscribe. Then until next time, good luck, and take care.